was there when Jomo Kenyatta was getting sworn in, right, Al?
It was after he was sworn in, but it was a celebration. We went out to the, um, I'm not sure what the word is in Swahili. In Sesotho, it'd be pizzo grounds or the celebration grounds, and they had a huge celebration. I keep meaning to send you pictures.
Yes, please. I would like that.
I will.
And then you went down to Zimbabwe?
Yeah, I've been to Zimbabwe. I've also been to Rhodesia because I was there when it was Rhodesia.
Oh, nice.
Been to Zambia, Zaire, Tanzania, Botswana, Namibia, South Africa, and Lesotho, and Egypt.
All the cool places, right?
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, the experiences you get there are just amazing. If you're into animals, there's no better place in the world to see wild animals. People are friendly, interesting cultures. Some of my best experiences are just randomly walking into a restaurant and being the only white guy there, and just how friendly the people are and how accepting they are. And you know, it's great.
And you went through the American Corps. American.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think we can feel safe to get started. Thank you guys for, first of all, really showing up every week. You know, just even when I keep thinking, okay, this week nobody's going to show up, but you all have, and I'm really, really motivated and encouraged and feel appreciated and loved by that, that you are coming and committed and want to see this through. Today, my name is Comfort Dunda. I call her my baby sister. She is my baby sister. She's from Zimbabwe, has been in the US slightly, maybe longer than I am. And I would like to welcome her to speak to us about her experiences as a Black woman in Minnesota mostly, but in the US, she's also traveled quite broadly in the US. Comfort, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. What a privilege, you know, it is to be able to meet all of you virtually. I'm, as my big sister says, actually she's my big tiny sister. I'm much taller than her, but she's my big sister, Khadija. Thank you so much. I want to thank you for thinking of me and inviting me into this space. I've been really looking forward to it. As she said, my name is Comfort Dondo. I come by way of Zimbabwe. I moved to Minnesota a little over now 17 years ago. I came, well, I won't give out my age, but I came when I was about 17. and I came with a big dream and a little tiny suitcase with very barely any cash on me, coming from really humble beginning at St. Kate's. And I just knew I had a big dream. And I knew at St. Kate's they taught women to lead and influence, and I was just gonna do that without any much of a plan. So, but it's miraculously happened. And here we are 17 years later. I call Minnesota my home, away from home. This place has raised me. I have moved to other parts of the country. I've moved to DC. I do lobbying type work. I've moved to Iowa, the Caucasus, but Minnesota kept calling me, so I call that formally home, away from home. I think I stopped by today to just share my story with you. I'm a storyteller. By virtue of being Zimbabwean, we love to share stories. And my journey didn't go quite as I had planned. I landed myself in a space where I was in an abusive marriage. And that was when my experience started to unravel, where I started realizing, wow, I am Black. And I started learning more about my Blackness when I moved to the US. Because in Zimbabwe, being Black was not a part of my identity. I was just Zimbabwean, I was just Comfort. But I started navigating the systems, and today I'm going to share a little bit about my personal experience with my abuse. About say maybe now 9 years ago, I found myself at a domestic violence shelter in St. Paul. And it was supposed to be a shelter for Black women. I remember when I got to the shelter, I had been married maybe 5 years, in the relationship for about 8 years. And I was just remembering that I was so tired, and I had toddlers, twins, and a 5-year-old. So I had a twin toddler, boy and a girl, and a little 5-year-old. And I remember walking into this shelter and was greeted with not so much welcome, but a lot of questions. And whether or not these questionnaires were long, I just remember I was tired. I just wanted a place to sleep. But there were folders given to me. The kids were crying. It was just hectic. And what I remember that time was I wanted to flee from my abuser, but the treatment I had gotten in the shelter was so much worse than what I was getting at home, because at least I knew when my abuser would beat me. I knew when I would trigger him, or I knew when he was drinking, he would get angry. I knew what to avoid. But in the shelter, it seems like I was learning new rules. And for me, it felt like jail. I couldn't really feed my kids. Imagine my whole life was in 2 suitcases. My 2 kids. So I had lost everything. But the only thing I wanted that time was my dignity, and so I felt like I wasn't given that. And so I started asking questions, and I started wondering, who makes these systems? What makes these systems that treat women like myself this way, sustain themselves? How are they getting funding? I just realized I stayed for a few more days, but I decided to go back home, which was the mistake of my life. Because upon returning home, I almost lost my life in that relationship. Fast forward, a few years later, I managed to escape for good. And now 4 years, I decided it's now 4 years this September. I formed an organization called Pumulani, named after my daughter. It's Pumulani, Minnesota African Women Against Violence. And I and personal experiences. As I was navigating the systems, I realized there was no particular program that was really focusing on women of African heritage. So women like myself or Khadija, who don't identify as African American, but were born in Africa and moved to the States. I realized there was a lot of culturally specific programs that were not targeting our community. So there was a problem, I had a solution. And so since our inception in 2016, we have since partnered with the Department of Human Services. We've been a recipient of the Bush Foundation grant. It's been enabling us to do the work in culturally specific ways. I wanted to share the background so you understand where I'm coming from and where I am and where I'm planning to go. As we speak now, I'm actually working with the city of Minneapolis to purchase some land to build a triplex or fourplex, which for me, I don't want that space to be shelter. I want that space to be for women like myself 9 years ago who just want to leave abuse, but maybe are pursuing an education or have a job, and they don't need to get in through the shelter system. They just want a home away from the abuse. So this is the project that we're embarking on right now as an organization. On a personal level, I am free from abuse. I continue to use my story to heal other women. We've been doing what's called healing circles, which is a space where African women just meet. Before COVID, would have tea ceremonies. I think it's Mr. Al. He said he traveled throughout Africa. Maybe he might have encountered some healing tea circles or tea ceremonies. People just gather and drink tea. So we've been doing that work here in Minnesota. My other experiences as a Black woman in Minnesota, as I said, I found out my Blackness when I was here, starting in college, where I realized that everything everything was around being Black. Like I wanted to join some clubs when I was at St. Kate's, but like, oh no, you gotta join the Black women's blah blah blah. Join the African, and it was like there was this compartmentalization of my Blackness. So I could be here, I could be there, and the more I got into the system and understanding the culture, I realized, I was different. There was a check mark, right, that I was supposed to check as a Black person. And then now raising biracial babies, I'm realizing more and more how the issue of race really has impacted me as an African Black woman. When I look back, I was just telling Khadija, I got triggered this afternoon when I was thinking about what to share with you. Some spaces where I've had people supervising me who did not have the educational background and or experience I had, but because they were white women, they were my supervisor, and I was a subordinate. But then I had more knowledge, and just how over time that it does something to your spirit, when you realize that you're constantly being looked down upon. And it's not always in ways that's very in your face. Sometimes it's what I call microaggressions. It's things that are very subtle, and so for me not to take so much time, I wanted to add on another component to say, I actually, my office was 4 blocks away from where Brother George Floyd was murdered, and reflecting on a journey that I've lived in South Minneapolis for a little over 15 years. And I started thinking about George Floyd's death and just what I had seen over the years, but what I had started to normalize, right? I had seen over policing. I had seen a lot of cop cars on Lake Street. But on Lake Street, I had also seen a lot of men of color, especially Native men, who were just really having some drug or alcohol issues. A lot of these individuals were more having mental health issues that needed to be addressed. But instead of having the right staff addressing it, there was more policing and criminalization of their issues. So the George Floyd murder did something to my spirit. It kind of forced me in the lockdown time to, when I drove by every time, I was thinking the burning of the buildings and what I was seeing on the outside is how I had been feeling on the inside. But as Black women, I've learned there's that strong Black woman myth of you have to be strong. But that myth, actually, I was living it. I was living it until the George Floyd murder, where I just started to say, you just get to work, keep your eyes, in your lane, do what you have to do a good job, behave, and get your paycheck and go home. But I was ignoring a lot of these things that were been happening to me, or things that were happening, things that were being done at me. It was killing my spirit. But I managed to take time to reflect. I'll be happy to share a video with you. I did a video on reflection on George Floyd's murder and how I related to that. It was actually really bad for me. I moved my kids now. We moved from South Minneapolis after 15 years. We've relocated to Eden Prairie. I just wanted something different. I didn't want to keep looking at those images because they were just doing something to my psyche. But I'm a speaker, I'm a storyteller. I could talk all night, but that's a little bit about me. And I welcome questions, but yeah, I'm very, very happy to be here. And thank you for being open to listening to what I have to say. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Comfort. Comfort is, she doesn't brag, so I'll brag for her. This young woman is a doctoral student, has held a lot of women that have cried on her lap, including me, to just hold us up. Sorry, that's the God saying yes. Sorry, my door banged. But so no, she amazing young women. When I say that as Africans coming from Africa, were coming with the sole purpose of supporting our brothers and sisters who have been stripped of who they are, who have been forced to forget who they are. Comfort and I's job is to remind them how royal they are, how resilient they are, where they come from, how powerful they are, that they've survived this for more than 400 years and are still here, laughing, singing, dancing, communicating, contributing to their communities, being upstanding citizens. So when I look at Comfort, I look at someone that is exactly like me, that has the same vision, which is to remind our brothers and sisters who have gone through this, to remind you, every single one of you, what we're capable of. So I'll open this to questions, and I will ask the first one. So Comfort, as a woman who started a nonprofit, how do you get the funding you need? Do you get what you need? What is that fight for funding? Where do you rank in the hierarchy of nonprofits?
No, sister, I'm losing your echo. Can you hear me?
Sorry. Yes. Now, can you hear me? Sorry. Did I? Much better.
Yeah, you might have some background noise, but I got a glimpse of your question. So you're asking how we get funding for the organization?
Yes.
And what that atmosphere looks like. Well,
yeah.
So I work in I don't know if some of you are familiar, but I assume, I know every woman on this platform, has a story, or if you have interacted, I work within the domestic violence movement in Minnesota. And prior to forming this organization, I didn't understand a lot of things because Minnesota is very nice, Minnesota nice. but in between the niceness, there's a lot of stuff that goes on that it's really hard for you to make sense of it until you're deep in. So with all due respect, the domestic violence movement is a very good example of a reflection of the inequalities and the disparities we have racially in Minnesota. So most of the clients disproportionately are women of color who are victims of gender-based violence. Just statistically speaking, for some reason, that's the way it is. But the leadership of most of the organizations does not reflect the women. So right now, I am the only African woman who is a director of a culturally specific program that works with, marginalized women. Most of our directors are white women. When it comes to funding, Pumulani is small. Our budget, is under 250,000 a year. Not very big. A staff of only three and a half right now. So our capacity is very small. So it seems like when you're in that capacity and you're minority owned, it's really hard to get by funding. I can tell you a story. Let me give you an example. I went one time to Brooklyn, the City Council of Brooklyn Park. I pitched my idea to the City Council. I wanted them to donate one of the homes so we could renovate it and have a safe space for women, because in the winter time, for some reason, there's higher rates of domestic violence. For some reason, I think people just drive each other crazy when they're locked up together. And so we realized the shelters are at full capacity in the Twin Cities here. So we'll get a woman from Kenya, for example, calling, she wants to leave, but there's no shelter space. The only shelter space might be in St. Cloud, but the kids go to school in Brooklyn Park. So that gives an issue. So I was pitching my spiel about, wanting to get space so we could have this safe space for women, because we saw that need over like a period of 2 to 3 years. One of the City Council members invited another director of one of the largest shelters here in Minnesota. I was excited to see my sister. I was like, I think she's here to support me. Well, after my presentation, she turned to me and started asking me if I had a 501c3 status. She started talking to me in a way that was very condescending, that I think the city council was very turned off by it, because this is someone who's very well respected in the movement. And this is not someone who doesn't know me. She had met me at meetings and we had conversed. And so I was shocked at her response to my presentation. She was not asking technical questions on how she could support me. I realized in that moment I was a threat to her. It was competition, and which made me sad, because there's a lot more good work we can do together than divided, right? So to answer your question, Sister Khadija, the environment is somewhat hostile, especially for women of color who are in the leadership position. It's very, very isolating for me. And it's a fight, you know. We have to fight for the resources. And I have to prove that we are doing the work 7 times over. I feel like I have to be perfect in how I do the work. So this is your long answer to your question. I hope that's clear. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your name, Comfort. I came in late, but.
Oh yeah. Thank you. Actually, I was just talking to my mother about my name this morning, really. So so it's a good so so I think some of the, just a little bit of background. I work in the domestic violence movement, working with African-born women, and one of the issues that is coming up in our work is the intergenerational cycles of abuse. So actually, I am a survivor of a childhood that was very abusive. So I got attracted to my father, right? My ex-husband, exactly like my dad, charming, handsome, all of the above, but then had the other side, you know. And so I was asking my mom about, I just lost my dad 2 weeks ago, which I'm thankful for the work I've been doing. I managed to heal and forgive, and we had a good relationship towards the end, you know, which is good. But my mom actually was telling me this morning, she's like, do you really know how you came about? I'm like, I've heard stories. So my mom was abused severely by my father, and she had left him. But he convinced her to come back to him. And when they got back together, I was born. And actually, so she called me my comfort. So this morning she was reminding me that, you know, you always offer me comfort. And I think that's true, because after my first degree from St. Kate's, I went back home to Zimbabwe to free my mother from my father. I went to buy my mom a home in a different town, because that's a whole different story for a different day. But I really think I am my mother's comfort. And it's hard to be mean when your name is. So I just, I think I try to live into my name. But thanks for asking. That's the background about my name. It's kind of sad, but also a good name. Sorry. Yeah.
Christine, and then Dr. Patel.
Thank you very much for sharing parts of your life with us. And I'm an administrator, and what you shared about being greeted with a pile of paperwork is all too familiar for us. We do that quite a bit to people that come to our school for the first time. And I'm wondering if you might be able to share. I appreciate that you were just hired and needed your dignity to be respected. And so I'm recognizing the difference between intent and impact, right? So the intent of the organization and of a school district would be to learn more about you. The impact is that it feels overwhelming and dehumanizing. So I was just wondering if you might be able to share with us, in a situation, how, rather than just being met with a lot of paperwork, how we might be more welcoming.
Absolutely. Thank you. I love your question. Yeah. So I was actually, I do offer some advisory role with Governor Walt. So we're talking a lot because of COVID. We're seeing a lot of homelessness. So I was just drafting something about how to change it somewhat so that it's more welcoming and it's less strenuous on folks who are seeking services. I think one of the things is to maybe, the paperwork has to be there, but maybe minimize it, right? Instead of like, prove to me that you're homeless, I don't know, prove to me that your husband beat you, those kind of things. Like, no, let's just get a minimal page, one pager. Let the person recoup. In our organization, I'm writing policies for the future shelter that we're going to have, and I would even go to as far as give the client at least 2 weeks to recoup, and in this 2 week you just get the basic information you need, but allow them to build some you say rapport, allow them to build some trust with the advocate, and things will start to come out. They will start to share even more than you might even ask for. In your exhausted state, think with clients that I've seen with English as a second language, sometimes it's even inaccurate, and there may be other services like medical having inaccurate data. But if you give them time to rest and give them time to trust, you'll probably be able to get more accurate data that will actually help you help them more. This is my own personal take on it. And I'm speaking from a place of being the one who was homeless at some point. And then also I have served on a board of a shelter, and I've also worked as a shelter manager. So speaking from those spaces as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Comfort, this is Ashok. Nice to meet you. Thank you for being courageous and an advocate and a voice that we don't hear enough in Rochester. We have a victim services program, and we also have problems with trafficking.
Oh yeah, Rochester.
Yeah, I'm curious what guidance you would give the training of the workforce so we can be better angels and do the hard work of sitting by without judging or offering any quick solutions.
Absolutely. Absolutely good. Thank you. It's very nice to meet you, Dr. Patel. And thank you for your good work. It sounds like you're doing some amazing work in Rochester. I love Rochester. I've only been there for conference, but I love the city. I really, yeah, that's a very hard question you ask, but it's also a very critical question that needs to be answered, because as I've been sharing with I was talking to some of my board members who really do not come. They come from a good place, but they do not have the experiences that I've had personally. And we were talking about how to look inside a person besides what you're seeing right in that moment. So I'll give an example: young women who are trafficked. I think it's very easy to get caught up on why did they leave home, or why are they on the streets. Even young women who might be on the streets, according to us, maybe being prostituted. We might think maybe it's their own choice, and we might not acknowledge that they're trafficked. But I think there's a lot that goes on behind. There's a lot in the background, right? So people behave the way they do because there's a background behind them. So I think in this work, I would encourage you to, for me, I always say, try to listen to hear, not to listen, but actually listen to hear. That's when you really get to understand folks without judging. And then I also think that the people facing any problem really have the solutions to their problem. So maybe not coming in from a place of, we have the solution for you, but like, how can we support you towards your solution? That's one thing that I've found to be really impactful in my work. I always ask the women, tell me when you want me to come in, and tell me when you need me to step back. And I've seen these women discovering their strength, their own superpower in them, because most of them are victims or survivors, and they've been told, you're nothing, they don't believe in themselves anymore. So I help them to start that process again. I'm not sure what institution you work out of. I don't know if it's a hospital system or you work with the government or with the
I work at Mayo Clinic. Yeah.
at Mayo, yeah. So that brings a whole lot. That brings a whole lot of Mayo. You know, Mayo is a really large institution. I would also encourage you to be. I have found to be a voice for the. I don't like to say voiceless, but a voice for the historically marginalized or unseen people. Sometimes it takes that bravery, where I will just challenge Governor Waltz. Like, I know you might think this is cool, but here's where my people are falling between the cracks. And I really am strong about being at the table, not just to be there, but actually being at the table that matters and actually bringing the voice of my community to the tables. So I think at Mayo, you could be that voice. But again, it takes you knowing what's really going on in the grassroots.
Yeah, I just thank you so much for that guidance, and you do know Mayo and the intuitive wisdom complexity very well.
Yeah.
I to tell you the truth, I just switch hats. I also am the co-president of the Zumbro Valley Medical Society, which is a lot smaller and not under the jurisdiction of Mayo directly, so I can change my voice a little or my representation. And the other is the Salvation Army. My wife is Catholic, so I guess that makes me half Christian, and so I can go to the Salvation Army board and be part of an interfaith voice, which sometimes will help also be clear. But thank you so much for your guidance, and we do need stronger training on how to do this well and how to as Khadija said, preserve the royalty and the beauty and the soul within.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for your work as well. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Comfort, obviously you've gone through a whole bunch of different experiences with the educational systems to get to where you are. Do you feel it's different for you as a Black woman going into the educational systems?
Oh, thank you, Lauren. Could you repeat that for me again?
You've gone a long ways through the educational systems in our country.
Yes, yes.
And in that whole process, do you see any difference for you going through that experience as a Black person as opposed to other people?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. I love that question. This is very interesting. Honestly, when my first year at St. Kate's, I was incredibly naive, for lack of a better word, because I was just coming fresh from Zimbabwe. I had gone to school with British kids, Irish kids, a lot of Zimbabweans who are, British born or their generation they've been farmers in Zimbabwe. So color did not mean anything to me. Like I knew like I said, I knew I was Black when I moved to the States. So going through the school system, like St. Kate's, when I started learning about race and racism, I was like, not here at St. Kate's. The nuns are sweet, I was just thinking the environment itself would make me immune to racism. But then as I started learning more, I think there's this thing where if you cannot heal what you cannot name, so if you don't have the name or the terminology for it, I just knew something was off. It was after my graduation when I went to pursue my Master's of Public Affairs at the Humphrey, when I started learning more about like microaggressions and I took one particular critical race theory class, and I started to look back. I'm like, oh, that's what that was. Initially, I thought some things were just not adding up. For instance, in Zimbabwe, I had gotten the scholarship to come to St. Kate's because I was one of the top 10 students in the country of Zimbabwe. One of the top 10 students in the country, not a region, in the whole country. So when I went to St. Kate's, and I had some professors making me feel like I'm not smart enough, maybe because of my accent, or they were condescending. it didn't add up for me. But see, I didn't have the language. So I did not know what just hit me until I was pursuing my master's. And you always have that one professor who like is like just an angel, and they helped me understand what had been happening to me. And so after my master's degree at the Humphrey, I started carrying myself with this knowledge that I could identify, like, okay, this is why this was happening. And during that time, I worked for small nonprofit organizations as well. And I always wondered, why is this young girl who just graduated getting the manager position to manage me when I've been here for 10 years and I have experience and I go above and beyond? And I just would go back inside myself and start to question myself, and at some point even losing my confidence, you know. So your education question, a lot of inequity, a lot of gaps within the educational system, and that was my experience. I didn't have the name for it at first, but now I do. So now as a PhD candidate, I'm really leading those conversations with my colleagues who I think actually only two of us Africans in the whole cohort. So yeah.
So do you think now that you've got a better command of the English language that it would be easier for you to do those same things again?
Comfort, how many languages do you have command of?
So I speak quite a bit. I speak French, I speak Zulu, Shona, Ndebele, which are more native languages. I know actually, Lauren, I do have amazing command of the English language. It's just actually when I first came to the US, I had a really thick British accent, which I don't know where it went now. My kids speak Minnesotan, so they try to understand me. I try to move my tongue a different way, but my issue was not the language. My issue was not having the understanding of what racism looks like, not having the understanding of what microaggressions are.
Not having the perception of it because you never experienced it, so there's no way for you to put it into words.
Yeah, I didn't know when someone tells me.
If you not know what that was, you knew what being asked to go to the farm was, or going to class was. So
I didn't. Yeah, when a professor tells you you carry yourself very well, I thought that was a compliment. But then now I say I carry myself very well. How am I supposed to carry myself? You know, because I understand that's actually not a compliment. You know, it's a microaggression, right? It's a microaggression to my whole race of the assumption that Black women don't carry themselves well. So you are the model Black woman. You really speak well. I'm like, how am I supposed to speak? Things like that, and just learning.
Comfort, I missed.
Naomi, then Dr. Patel.
I missed the beginning, but did you not experience racism in London or in England by the Irish or the other students? I mean, like.
Oh, sure. Yeah, Naomi. So so I studied in Zimbabwe. I went to boarding schools in Zimbabwe, and in Zimbabwe, our history is our colonizers were the British. Right. And there's some Brits who stayed. I have friends who actually, you will not know they're white. If you're talking to them, you hear them speak my language, you think they're Shona like me. And then they're Brits, you know, so those were my friends growing up. And the race issue was no longer like that when I was growing up in Zimbabwe. Unlike when my mom grew up, my mom is South African. So my mom grew up during apartheid. It was a totally different story, right? Or in the 80s when, as Al said, it was Rhodesia, you know, during that time, racism was happening. But when I grew up, we actually in Zimbabwe, we're called born free. We were born when there was freedom. So we really coexisted with our British brothers and sisters. We went to the same boarding schools. And I think for me personally, that was the shocking thing when I started learning about race and racism, because I had just grown up in a space where we're the same. We're the same, just different looking colors, but there was not treatment, you know, somebody being treated better than, or my parents were farmers. My mom was a farmer. My friends I grew up with British, they were all farmers, and we just had the same lifestyles, and
Oh, thank you. Comfort, two parts. You commented you have a biracial identity in the next generation.
Yes, my children are biracial. Yes.
And I am married to a Chinese Filipino American Catholic from St. Kate's who's a nurse.
Oh. Sounds like a St. Kate's girl. Okay.
And and I was born in Kampala,
Oh
so
wow.
I'm technically African, but I was raised Hindu in Canada for 20 years before I came to Minnesota. So
Oh,
I am comforted by your courage to maintain your humanity, your individuality,
mm,
and your authenticity as we enter this age of exploration with our future generations.
absolutely.
My oldest daughter is starting medical school in St. Louis University,
Oh,
and on the way down, she had me listen to a podcast by Harriet Washington
mm,
called Medical Apartheid,
oh wow.
and the injustice that science has done
Mm,
to selectively understand behavior, molecular pharmacology, all the rest.
mm,
I was trying to figure out how do you frame a non-racial science or non-race-based science approach to dialogue and measurement as we go forward. What advice do you have for us? Because it's going to get worse with computers and AI and all the
right.
privacy issues out there.
Wow. Wow, that's a more medical question. I'm not sure I will be able to answer that, but I can give you some reflections on what I heard you saying. Um, First of all, yeah, you are my brother from another mother, Uganda. That's awesome. It's very good to meet you. You know, raising for me, raising biracial children. My children do not look like me. My children look more like their father. They look more Norwegian, blonde hair, and all that good stuff. And I've learned so much from raising these babies. I'm realizing just how where the world is going, how global we are, whether we like it or not. How also how our younger generation, they actually ask critical questions. They care. They care about knowing why does the difference matter, right? I've had conversations with my kids. I've had conversations with my nieces who really, my nieces from my ex-husband's side of the family, where we have an uncle who's really not about opening up to all this kind of discussion, and his daughter really challenges him, and so this gives me a lot of hope when we're moving into the medical world, thinking how do we have such discussions. I think how we're going to do it is continue to plant the seeds with our babies, because the world looks so much different with them and the way they think. When I just look at millennials, I feel a lot of hope. I feel a lot of hope. My 8-year-old daughter was really asking about like Floyd and like, and I heard them, I have twins, boy and a girl, and I heard them talking in the back of the car. They're like, um, mama, so like are you in danger because you're brown? And then my daughter said, no, but you're not gonna get killed because like George Floyd was a little bit darker than you. Like this is their 8-year-old like brain just processing. And I can imagine them as teenagers and how they keep asking these critical questions, right? To question the status quo. So I think that's how, Dr. Patel, that's how we're gonna have these non-racialized scientific approaches and or conversations. We just look to our children. We look to your daughter, who is going to be in the medical field, and having her make you listen to that podcast. It means she's awake in a consciousness about how things need to be. And so I remain hopeful because of the children.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was really hard to listen and learn more. Just like it takes courage to have this group. I was remiss to say, but Rotarians around the world, that if we just have these types of listening sessions with small groups, we can start to have the courage to do that deep listening, to hear not just to listen. Yeah, I
Mhm.
think
Thank you.
you're onto something, and I thank and cherish everybody, Khadija.
Thank you.
Change the world one friendship at a time.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Comfort. So this is Dale Quigley. I have to admit, I think the last comment you just made about your 8-year-olds wondering in the back whether or not you were at risk because of the color of your skin is just so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
That any child should have to think, because of my parents' skin or my brother's skin, they're at risk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
True. I am so sorry that they had to feel that way.
Yeah, that it broke my heart. And I continue to hear them speak. You know, they're very, Khadija knows, they're very different 8-year-olds. I don't know, I'm like, are you 8 or are you going to 20? They have these critical conversations with me. Sometimes I don't even know how to answer, but I'm also grateful to witness them teaching me in that they're under, like, how much comprehension they're having of what's going on around them. And that way, I think it continues to prepare me as their guardian to have some of these lessons, you know, that we have. We were in Florida at some point, and there was a police car, and my daughter started saying, "Oh my God, it's a cop!" Like this, her response at 8. I was like, "Mama, so what's wrong? So what? You know, he's trying to protect us," but in her head, Floyd thing is still there. So I think it's
Her
challenging.
name is Zoza.
Yeah, her name is Zoe. So it's really, I think it's really challenging me to keep having those conversations with the kids. Yeah, and also their cousins. I try to do that. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I think back to several years ago, there was another solution put forth in a popular song where somebody said, I think we should just have everybody breeding with everybody else. And if we do that enough times, pretty soon we won't be able to tell the difference.
Oh, Lauren, there's a new song as of last week. It says, "You can try Jesus, but don't try me, because I throw hands." I'm kidding.
I know I have to listen to that song. I don't know.
I'll send it to you. It's so cool. I'll send it to all of you. It's so funny. It just says, look, Jesus is the savior, I'm not.
Oh. Mhm.
Thank you so much for your story, Comfort.
Yeah, thank you for awarding me the opportunity to share.
Well, you're a great storyteller and you're a great humanist, and it's wonderful. I came to this country from another place too, but it's so wonderful to hear your story. And I was on the board of the Women's Resource Center here in Winona. We were always trying to reach out. We were all white. We were always trying to reach out to communities of color.
Right.
It was so difficult. We were trying to reach into some of the Black communities, some of the Hmong communities, and it was patriarchal, and we could not make those connections. It was so difficult, but maybe we were trying too hard. I don't know what, if you can give us any ideas of approach or how we can do it different as white people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Taff.
Well, thank you for your story. It's absolutely a wonderful story, and it's so nice to meet you.
Oh, it's a pleasure too. I'm so glad to
Listen, one other thing I just want to say is I'm so glad that you were able to get together with your father in the end, because that's going to be with you for the rest of your life, and be able to forgive him.
Absolutely. You know what? I'm on a mission to make sure any of my friends who complains. I have one friend right now in Namibia. I went to high school with him. She is British Zimbabwean. He's having some tension with his dad. And so he called me for advice. I'm like, dude, you need to make those amends with your father, because when he's gone, that's it. And you're going to have that burden. So I'm so happy this weekend he went to visit with his father. He didn't want to, but I pushed him. And so I think I'm on a mission now for the women that I work with in the healing circles, to talk about, I think unless you heal your relationship with your father, you can never have healthy romantic relationships, because you will keep attracting something that mimics your relationship with your father. You know what I mean? So I feel like that's a component that we need to put into our conversation with the women that we work with, because we have a lot of that bruising in our community because of the patriarchy you mentioned. So to answer your question about being able to successfully form allyship with marginalized communities, that's a really common one. I hear that a lot. Even I, as an African woman from the southern part of Africa, I've been having a hard time going, even like, for example, going into the Somali community, because I don't identify as Muslim, for example. I am not from that region. And so just being able to enter the community, it's a lot of, what do you want? Who are you? Who sent you? And then I can't even imagine, a white man or a group that is mostly white trying to get into the. So I think it's about trust building, relationship building. I would the nuggets that I would share with you that work, at least with the people that I've built because I've built allyship with a lot of amazing white organizations and governmental organizations. I think it's when people come to us and saying, we know what we know, we're mainstream, we don't know what you know. Teach us what you know. I'm more receptive. When people come to us and saying, we have the standard and our standard is right, and we're gonna show you how you should do this, then I completely shut down. And I think a lot of the marginalized communities, they have that mindset of, why are you coming in? So I think it's a lot of brick upon brick, building the foundation of trust. It has to be a trusting relationship. But I can totally understand your sentiments. I think it's really difficult for some of the folks to trust. In our African immigrant community, there's even a layer of like, for example, I working with like the previous governor and now the current governor, wearing those hats, changing those hats, as Dr. Patel said earlier. When I go back into my community, people are very mistrusting of government because of the places we come from. Most of our governments are not to be trusted. So people really, some of them, they take a while to let me in, even as an African woman. So sometimes I have to remove my my advisory, governor's office hat or my United Nations hat, and I just have to show up as a survivor, and then they connect with me. It's a lot of it's like a dance. I don't know. Yeah, it's really difficult though. I can imagine, but good luck. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have so much wisdom.
Yeah.
Comfort, I have a question for you. This is Ted Johnson. I was reading somewhere recently suggestions of white folks like I am finding some people of color that we could meet and begin to build a friendship with in some way, shape, or form. I'm fortunate because we do have a number of people of color at the church I go to, and I have some friends there.
Nice.
And we've talked to a couple of them. We're going to plan to get together and have more coffee these days and just sit and chat about a variety of things and see where it goes. But I was wondering, do you have any thoughts or ideas how might it be possible for folks like myself to find or meet some people in other communities and to try to build just our individual relationships and learn more about each other?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Ted.
Comfort, this is Ted. Ted, there's no way you're white, so, but you can answer that for him.
Oh, or it's like some people I know, like I have a friend who, I'm like, he speaks like fluent Swahili. I'm like, when he's talking, I'm like, are you sure you're Minnesotan or like, where are you from? And so.
No, this one was born in the wrong skin, I promise.
He's an African brother. No, that's a really, I'm trying to think. So this is not to support like a community group, but to just form personal friendships. Where are you based, Ted? Where like which part of the metro are you in? Up north, or are you local?
Yeah, I'm in Roseville. The church I go to is in St. Paul, close to governor's residence, actually. I do a lot of volunteering and work in Minneapolis and a variety of places.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
Rossville. Okay.
and I lived for 40 years in the South
Oh, okay.
before moving back here in 2010.
Oh, wow.
And I say we ignored the advice of our friends moving north and the psychiatrists they sent us to.
Mm,
What are you doing going back from the South to the North Winters?
Yeah, I think maybe I'll kind of go back to like what I said earlier on to Taff. Like it's always about building trust first. I think it's to me the trust building is like laying the foundation of a home. It takes so much more work to put the foundation, and then once the foundation is strong, it's the home is done. You know, the trust, the friendship is done. So I think it's finding ways to build trust. There's a lot of, sorry, my daughter is bothering me. I have to open something for her. So here. I think there's a lot of families in our communities that are hurting. There's a lot of families that, because of the mass incarceration, a lot of young men have grown up without fathers. It's an opportunity for you to serve, which I'm sincerely hearing that from you. There's a lot of young Black boys who could use a mentor. And I know that mentor would mean the difference between him going into the same cycle. I think there's a lot of opportunities to serve, but again, it goes back to trust building. I can even think in our African immigrant community, I was privileged to have a host family. My host dad was he was an amazing guy. Actually, he was a white man. He was the man who taught me what it meant to have a healthy father-daughter relationship, because I never had that. So from him, I learned how I wanted my dad to be. So when I was mending my relationship with my dad, I started sharing with him my relationship with Ed, you know. And so there's a lot of young women like myself who, because of my relationship with Ed, I was then able to get out of my vicious cycle of being attracted to what I thought was the perfect guy who beat me, you know, because that's all I knew. So I think, yeah, I mean, I think church is a good place to start, the church community. And I think I'll repeat myself again. I think when you really look to see deeper, you'll see where the need is. And then when you listen to people, you will really be surprised. I think the last thing on that, I'll say, sometimes people who are hurting, or most of the people that I work with, they're in survival mode. And when they're in survival mode, they don't even know, sometimes you don't even know, they don't know what they need. They don't know the help that they need. But if you identify something that you feel like they need, there's a way you can go about it, approaching them without telling them that I know what you need, you know, but being able to support them in that way. But yeah, thank you. Sorry, I talk a lot, so I'll stop. Yeah.
Right, we're enjoying every bit of it. One comment just kind of occurs to me is that the challenge of reaching out is to figure out how you can be involved in things that are going to naturally connect you, because you can't decide you're going down to whatever neighborhood and say, I've got friendship in one holster and, you know, trust in another, and I'm going to fire off one of those puppies before the sun sets. It doesn't work that way.
Oh yeah, right.
This is Noemi, and speaking from a Spanish speaking perspective, you know, there's a lot of Americans or Anglos who want to learn Spanish, you know, and take the Rosetta Stone class or have traveled to Nicaragua with Fast for Hope or whatever. But I know, like at Barnes and Nobles or at Borders, they've done like a conversational exchange. And it's like 30 minutes of speaking with the native Spanish speaker. And then the Spanish speaker has an opportunity to speak with the native English speaker, and you speak English. And both of you know just enough, like, hola, ¿cómo estás? Me llamo, ¿dónde está el baño? You know, the basics. They know the basics in English, you know the basics in Spanish. And it's in a neutral space, you know, it's at a bookstore, you know, you have coffee. But that's where you build that relationship and invest in people on a personal basis, which sometimes I think we as, you know, we're good Sunday Christians, you know, and we feel like we have to go on a mission trip across the world, but we won't talk to our neighbor or the person who's in front of us at the grocery store, you know, and that's the part where it's about connecting, is just my opinion.
Yeah,
That's
Naomi,
a good suggestion, Naomi. Yeah, and of course with the pandemic right now and the difficulty of being able to get out and go to coffee and things with others is a major issue. Another thing that was suggested also was stop going to the stores where you buy your groceries or your pharmacy or that kind of thing, and go to a neighborhood that's different than yours. Maybe it's a neighborhood where in a black part of the city, or something of that nature, and patronize those places. And perhaps in that process, you might begin to meet somebody. You might begin to meet, you know, a proprietor or somebody of that nature. So maybe there are ways like that as well. I don't know.
And please put your mask on, especially over your nose as well. It's ridiculous.
Yes.
These people with their noses hanging out. I'm like, what's the point? Take it off.
I wanted to add that, if I can, that when you want to talk to somebody and want to get to know them, there has to be mutuality. That is, there's nothing worse, I think, than going to some person of color and saying, I'm white, tell me about yourself. All I'm here for is to learn about you. And you need to take your time teaching me. Unless it's something like this, where somebody is, like Comfort has volunteered to come forward and do that. But you have to be careful that you aren't just being the white guy expecting the person of color to teach you stuff. So volunteering at things, the thing with the languages, you know, as Comfort said, she had a host father. You know, St. Kate's, with their international student organization, tries to find people in the community that will kind of be a host parent to the international student. Will invite them to their house, will invite them to celebrations, will, you know, do things with them. We did that with some students there when we lived by St. Kate. Do things like that where, you know, so the other side is getting something out of it. And then you'll really have a chance to be a conversation. But don't just expect, you know, I want to talk to you because you're a person of color, so this is all about me.
No, I agree with you completely, Alan. I wasn't intending that sort of thing.
Sure.
In fact, before the virus things set in and shut everything down, I was volunteering to teach English as a second language at
Excellent.
Wellstone in Minneapolis.
Yeah,
And,
that's great.
and got to become some friends with some younger people there, but that was a very limited opportunity. But it was interesting working with both African and Latino students coming in as immigrants and refugees from a lot of difficult situations.
No, and Ted, I didn't mean to sound as if I was attacking you. I just felt that, you know,
Yeah,
when
no,
we do
it's
these
okay.
things, we have to be very careful.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree with you. I agree with you very much. Yep. Thanks.
Say, Comfort,
Yes.
this is Bruce. I have a question for you, a little bit of a challenge perhaps. When you take a trans-patriarchal society, and you go into a place where it's still a very patriarchal culture.
Do I need to warn her about you first?
Oh, I'm a better angel, braver angel, conservative.
Consider yourself warned, Comfort.
Morning. Okay.
Why Warner? I mean, the question is just, I'm curious, how do you cross that boundary if you're going into a patriarchal society without becoming a cultural imperialist? I'm just kind of curious, because that's one of the things I always have a concern with.
Yeah, very good question. when I started this work, I was coming. Well, I started this work with my St. Kate's, framework. If you know anything about St. Kate's, right? It's feminism, but at some point, I got some elders to sit me down, and really got the lecture. If I was to make an impact in the community, I had to. I like the analogy of wearing different hats. I had to approach it and word it in a way that was still honoring to the culture. So I'll give you an example. For the African community, the culture is very much patriarchal, and also the men, they want to be included in these conversations. There's the belief, the man is the head of the household. In the Christian faith, because I work with community leaders, I've gone to different churches to speak, to share my story. The men in our community, they are the heads of the household. So when you are approaching a congregation, you have to address them as such. So I think in this work, I've been able to reach out to as many communities, including my Muslim community members, because I studied them. I studied them very well to know how to talk to them. For instance, at a church space, West African church space, I'm not mentioning the F word, the feminism word. I'm mentioning more things about rebuilding the family, keeping the family together, and also with our men, we've realized that the blaming, right? The blaming men as the perpetrators, it doesn't really work well. So we do this work so differently, where we actually say, we bring men to the table and say, why is the violence increasing? Let's have a conversation. Versus we'll call police on you if you keep, offending, because that does not change the behavior. So we've changed the way we do the work. I know mainstream doesn't do that work. I have gotten in trouble for doing the work that way. But this is how we bring the men to being accountable, because in our community, men disproportionately offend. But if we accuse and just alienate them even more, it hasn't been helping us. So this is how I cross over. I study community, I study religious sects. Like, I know much more about Muslim now. Grown up Christian, understanding, understanding that it's important to go via the imam if I'm going to get this young man to listen to even what I have to say. So yeah, it's been a lot of learning for me, which is
at the Mayo Clinic, we went through a lot of training where we were told, and because they have a lot of different cultural components coming in, they tried to help us learn that our role in the medical community was not to change their culture, it was to heal their wounds and illness. And so they trained us how to basically be part of a very patriarchal society.
Oh, wow.
Much so, you can think of the societies I might be thinking of. We were taught how to behave appropriate to that culture, because our role in the relationship was to be the caregiver on healthcare, not the whatever activist.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Which is causing a lot of our Black men to die sooner than they need to, because they're not taking care of themselves. To them, going to go and get that checkup that they need for their prostate, for example, is beneath them. So you get caught up with a cancer that could have been fixed. But now you're dead at 35, you're leaving a very young family. So this toxic masculinity needs to stop, because you're a human being too. You need the same care, same attention, same love, same medical, everything that a human being does. So we need to start teaching our young men, especially our Black men, that getting help is not a weakness, which is what has been preached to them forever.
Yeah, that's right.
sometime now, we're going to have to talk, Khadijah, because I have a personal story on that track. Thank you for that.
I need to sign a waiver on that one. I'm kidding.
Khadijah, I'm not sure that that's something that's exactly limited to the young black man.
It's just a man thing. It's a man thing,
I was gonna
right?
say, I will
Yes.
share a brief personal story. I grew up raised by two very loving parents, but my father was a literally brilliant research scientist. And I grew up in a household where one didn't speak to father until after he'd come home and read his evening paper, because that's just the way it was. And when I got married,
that's how it is in my house. My daughter freaks out if the living room is not clean before daddy comes home. So
Yeah,
it still is.
but when I get married and had a family, I went into it with the assumption that father knew everything, because my father did.
He does.
And that created some real issues, which fortunately we were able to resolve. And we've been together now for, well, in a couple of weeks, we'll celebrate 52 years.
Yay.
The point I want to make is that it may be more of a guy thing than it is young black men, or because I sure came up that same way, that and ask for help. My heavens, and if I don't know everything, what's wrong with me? Which is, where I was as a, young and to some degree not so very young man for a while. But the other observation, and I want to pick on something that only probably a few folks heard when we first signed on. Khadijah, you raised the question, why do white folks behave that way? We were talking about all of our brothers out there and sisters out there in Sturgis at the moment.
Yes.
And one of my thoughts, and this has kind of rattled around in my brain for some time, is that it may go all the way back to the founding of this country, because the early colonial residents came to this country primarily because they couldn't get along with anybody else. Either they came voluntarily, such as my ancestors in Massachusetts, or they were sent, such as some of the folks in places like Georgia, but in either case, they couldn't get along with anybody else. And I just wonder if somehow that doesn't infuse a bit, at least, of the majority culture in this country. That whole lot, just basically people who couldn't get along with anybody else. And so that sort of translated into this, absolutely rigid belief that, nobody can tell me anything about what to do. Because you still see it reflected, and it takes a real good slap up the side of the head before a good group of people will get out of that mode. Again, that's ramblings on a late Wednesday afternoon when it's almost cocktail time.
Oh no, Mr. Hartford, I totally get it, and I think that is going to be how we're going to be extinct. Is that type of thinking. I appreciate the fees, free, you're free and you're all of that, but you cannot be free at my risk.
Exactly. Is the saw is, your right to swing your arm stops at my nose.
Yeah. So Naomi, you had something?
So I put in the chat box a link, and it's like an hour and 45 minutes about like the history of like the Confederacy, and like where do we have these attitudes of, it's so interwoven in our foundation as a country, where we think of white superiority and white. I challenge you guys to take some time to look at it. It's very thought-provoking, and it's also a challenge to take action as Rotarians. And I don't know, Comfort, if you're a Rotarian, but you would make an excellent Rotarian, because I think you have a lot to contribute, and we need strong women to help lead the fight, or
been asking her. She thinks we're a cult.
We'll have a secret handshake.
I never said you were called. You put in your.
You said that to me.
No, actually, Khadija has been really getting me to think about, and just the energy that I'm feeling here. I'm like, I am signed up. Okay, I just love it.
Hey.
I love the diversity of ideas and just. I don't know. I love it.
This child said to me, "You guys are in a cult."
We have 16 witnesses. Comfort. Come join my club.
We'll teach you the secret handshake.
Okay. You're so silly. Oh.
No, she's such a leader in everything she touches. I'm so proud of this girl. Just
Be a good member.
everything. She goes through anything and she fixes it.
Oh.
And then she tells me how to do it.
Yeah.
Mr. Hatford, I really appreciate you. Please talk to your white people. Tell them to stay home and put their masks on properly.
So comfort though, I've been a member over 20 years and nobody's taught me the secret handshake yet. So if they don't teach it to if they don't teach it to you right away, don't feel bad.
I was going to say, Al, I've got 10 years on you, and I haven't learned it either.
I'll be patient. I'll wait. Oh.
You have to come back and come to the Roseville one. That right?
I would say come to any one that you feel like, because
Oh no, she's coming
Rotary,
where I go. Come on.
Rotary is welcoming most of the time.
Rotary's welcoming
everywhere.
anywhere.
Wonderful. I'm excited. I'm so excited. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I also do some work with Books for Africa, and one of our big supporters has been the Rotary Club of in Zimbabwe, in Harare. So yeah, I'm aware of the good works that the Rotary members do. So I shall join this cult. Yeah.
I think we're holding you to that now.
Yeah.
You just realized you've made that statement in front of the future Grand Poobah.
We're sending you the bill, the membership fees in the mailbox.
Oh, please send it over. I'm writing the check right now.
I can't wait to meet you in person and again virtually. This is awesome.
Yes. No, very cool, guys. I'm so happy this happened. This week has been crappy. This week has been very, very crappy for me. So I'm just glad it's
I'm
going
sorry.
down.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, so we have a young woman that we're burying in Sweden on Friday at 28.
Wow.
Slept on Sunday night, came to visit her parents and did not wake up.
Wow.
Very sorry.
So my family is a mess right now.
Can
And
we
I'm
help?
all by myself, so I don't answer their phones anymore. They're all together. I'm just here. It's just me.
I'm here.
I know, baby, I know. But yeah, it's I think there's a perspective Black women have on death that is very different from anyone else. That's why we don't fall apart. For example, when the police kill our sons. Actually, personally, I would burn the whole shit down. But most Black women, Black human beings know that there is a justice system that is beyond this justice system. There's a universal justice system. So justice will always be met. So talk about the law of just evening things out. Things have to even out. It doesn't take very quickly, but it does eventually, and things do even out. So we don't know why she had to go that quickly, but it's just a transition. It's just a change of energy. So she's a different energy now. She's not here physically, but she's still here. Yeah, anyway, let's stay as long as we want. And Kathy has had a long week, Miss Kathy.
As long as somebody remembers, nobody's dead.
Miss Kathy is holding in place as so we need to be thoughtful about her, and